Good day, everyone. It's JB coming to you from somewhere in the record sphere as we continue to look into the artists and music in my record collection. Well, please click on the subscribe and notification buttons so you can be informed of when new content is available, and as always, much appreciated. This is episode 7, and we'll continue and end selections from the blues. In my last episode, I ended with Muddy Waters, so we'll continue on to a guy who was heavily influenced and encouraged by Muddy Waters, Paul Butterfield and the Paul Butterfield Blues Band. This guy was so enthralled by the blues, he gave up playing the flute and picked up the harmonica. He was eventually able to sit in and jam with the likes of Muddy Waters, Elvin Bishop, and others. In a wonderful documentary called Horn from the Heart, the Paul Butterfield story, Nick Gravenitis and Paul's brother Peter talk about Paul's introduction to the Chicago nightclub life while he was still underage.
I remember I took him to his first club, Smitty's Corners, 35th Street, Muddy Waters Band. And we sort of hustled our way in the door. We're both just young punks, no ID.
And then we would hear things like the police would call and somebody had pulled a car over and there were a bunch of unsavory characters in it, including my brother. And then my father, who, was a lawyer, could go down to the station and get them out.
But it was the music that continued to attract Paul to the clubs, and the musicians saw something special in him too. He wasn't just a guy who played the blues, he was a guy who felt the blues, and they could see the potential in him. So his influence grew within the Chicago blues community. By the way, please check out the documentary I mentioned. I found I could watch Horn from the Heart on Pluto TV, but you can also find it on YouTube. Paul Butterfield Blues Band's self-titled debut album came out in 1965 and is ranked as one of Rolling Stones magazine's top 500 albums of all time. Well, that was followed by East West in 1966. Both albums received great reviews by critics and audiences alike and featured some stand-up Chicago-style blues. Next up is Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes, an album called This Time It's For Real. The first time I heard this band was in a movie from 1987, Adventures in Babysitting. I remember thinking to myself that the soundtrack was much cooler than the movie. They had this blues and old school soul soundtrack paired with a teenage girl theme, but somehow I guess it worked, though I never saw that an actual soundtrack was made available, which was kind of sad. This album is from 1977, and it was their third album from this group formed in the Jersey Shore area. Lots of fun songs on the album, including Check Mr. Popeye. A Various Artist compilation up next with a mix of blues and R&B titled 25 Years of Rhythm and Blues Hits. Artists such as Muddy Waters, John Lee Hooker, and Roy Brown, to name a few, show up on the album. This comes from the King record label, the year 1960. The King label was started in Ohio and originally marketed itself as a country music label, advertising, if it's a king, it's a hillbilly. If it's a hillbilly, it's a king. They later expanded their musical repertoire to include blues and R&B, and even signed the likes of James Brown early on in his career. A good move on their part, in my opinion. Another album featuring various artists called Body Blues. This album features, let's say, more adult-oriented blues songs. Lots of hidden meaning and metaphors hide away some of the raunchiness of the album. But one of my favorites is from Memphis Slim called If You See K. I'm not going to go into details of what it's about, but if you think about the title, it spells out a certain word. It won't take you long to figure that one out. Lastly, Willie Dixon, I Am the Blues. This is the 6th studio Chicago blues album released in 1970. It is also the title of Willie Dixon's autobiography. The album features songs written by Willie Dixon and originally performed by other artists. Two of my favorites, Backdoor Man, was performed by Howlin' Wolf, and Hoochie Coochie Man was originally performed by Muddy Waters. Well, that'll do it for the blues. When I return, we'll be tackling the R&B and rap section. Lots of good stuff coming from that area, including not just R&B, but I'll be doing a whole episode of our musical hometown hero, Prince, and another full episode featuring artists that influenced the Minneapolis sound as well. So many good episodes on the way, so be sure to stay tuned for future episodes. For now, I'm going to leave you with a little something from the soundtrack to Adventures in Babysitting. I gotta play me some Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes. This is Expressway to Your Heart. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.